I would love if you would indulge me to just explore your relationship with Charlie Kirk and what you've been feeling and going through over the past week.
So Will, Charlie was a great friend. I think you know this. He was a friend of our entire family. He was a great friend of Don's. He was a friend of mine. He was a great friend of my father's. Charlie walked into the very office I'm in right now about 10 years ago, and he told me, and I mentioned this on Fox and Friends this morning. He mentioned this whole story where he wanted to literally change the hearts and minds of the youth across this nation, right? And people come into this place all the time with kind of, nonsense ideas, and you kind of roll your eyes and, and you say, yes, 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 that's wonderful. And very few can actually execute on that vision. And Charlie built everything that he said he was going to build, 10 years ago. At that point, he had 2 or 3 chapters. They were small. And he goes, Eric, I want to take over the student bodies of every single chapter across the nation. I want to insert great conservatives into collegiate leadership. I want to create great organizations. I want to get out the vote. I really want to, stop the indoctrinations and the revisionist history and, the nonsense that we see all over the place. And Will, the guy did it. I mean, he freaking did it. And it's why they decided to sit on a roof at 200 yards away with a rifle, and take his life. They can't stand people like Charlie. They can't stand people like you. They can't stand people like me, people who have loud voices and who have never been afraid to get on that stage, and make our voices heard. And, Will, you've watched the entire fight, probably closer than anyone, right? At your time at Fox and everywhere else. And I mean, if we didn't have the voice that we had, if I didn't have the loud voice, if my father didn't have the loud voice, if I wasn't willing to go to every single swing state in the country and do 10 rallies a day in crowds of people, just like the one you saw Charlie was in, we would not have won. We would have gone steamrolled. Hillary raised 5 times the amount of money. We the vast majority of the first campaign was self-funded, right? She raised $1.5 billion. It's that we had the backbone and the guts, and the fortitude to stand on that stage and be a little bit politically incorrect and speak to the people and speak to the masses that my father was able to win and take back over this country. And man, what Charlie did by doing that, by creating the greatest youth movement of all time, I mean, he changed the entire, he changed a generation. And by the way, if these people think that shooting somebody in the neck, is going to somehow delete everything that this guy stood for, everything that we stood for, everything, all it does is concrete his very ideology into every single one of those people who, by the way, Will, are going to be voting for the next 50 years in this nation, hopefully, longer. And so I think this is the greatest kind of, law of unintended consequences. I think the damage that they've done to their party over and over and over, whether it was a Russia hoax or trying to kill my father multiple times, including Butler and then in, Florida, people are understanding the radical left for exactly who these people are. No different than the comedian. She didn't sound like much of a comedian, but whoever the hell that, quote unquote social influencer was that you played at the lead into this whole story. And I can tell you, here's the positive news. Let me just end at this. For as much nonsense as we all see on social media, 99.9% of people in this country are disgusted by the events that happened a week ago. Somebody's going to say something outlandish because they always do, using free speech from the, from their mom's basement. But honestly, this country is in harmony. This country mourns the loss of a great American, and short of being just a person of absolute insanity and craziness, no one mourns death in this country. And I can't tell you how many people this is pushed to the right, to God, to country, to the Constitution, to the American flag, to everything that we love as Americans.
I hope you're right, Eric. I do wonder today, and I do question my own conviction of where the 99 percentile of America is. I don't want to over-index the crazy fringe and the stories on TikTok. And I hope you're right. I hope it is that America is still a good place, and regardless of our disagreements, whether or not you're left or you're right, you can quite honestly decline to celebrate assassination. It strikes me, Eric, as you're talking, thinking about the 2 different attempts on your father's life. You, your brother, your family, the rest of your siblings, you have been surrounded by threat. And Charlie, make no mistake, was part of your circle. We all know how close Charlie was to your family, how much work he did, behind the scenes to reelect the president. You and your family, Eric, have been surrounded by threat. And it makes me wonder 2 things. Like, how does that feel? And And how do you retain such an optimism about the vast majority of America when it touches you individually, Eric, so frequently and so close?
Yeah. So, Will, I wrote a book, and it's called Under Siege. And I wrote that title, 2.5 years ago when I started it. And, um, first they tried Russia, Russia, Russia. Then they tried to impeach my father the first time. Then they tried to impeach him the second time. Then they went after Kavanaugh. You covered that very well on Fox. And they raided our home. They debanked us. I got 112 subpoenas, likely the most subpoenaed person in American history. They weaponized every DA against us. They weaponized every AG against us. They filed 91 criminal counts against my father for doing absolutely nothing wrong. They tried to bankrupt our company. They tried to take the name off of every single building, including Trump Tower, the building that I'm sitting in right now. They took my father off of the ballot in Colorado. Then they took him off the ballot in Maine. Right? I mean, they took his free speech away. Every judge gagged him all across the nation. Then they posted his mugshot all over the place. Then they took him off of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. They turned down my dials. They tried to take away our free speech. And I was on Sean Hannity one night, and I said, Sean, they've tried to do everything, right? And that's what I write about in the book, the siege that they put on our family. I wouldn't be surprised, Sean, if they tried to kill him. And by the way, I got hit by the left. How dare you say that? How dare you say that? And I go, no. Like, honestly, these people have tried to do everything they could to take us out of the game, right? Again, bankrupt, delete, destroy, smear, laugh at, make fun of. I mean, all the way back to, Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You probably remember that. I'm not sure if somebody with Donald Trump's intellect and accomplishments could make a president. Like, give me a break, coming from a community organizer. Like, give me a freaking break. And I said I wouldn't be surprised if they resorted to physical violence. And, I had my two kids on my lap, and Laura was sitting right next to me. I know you know Laura very well. And, one of your colleagues over there. And that's when I hear the gunshots start going off. And, and then sure enough, 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, once again, it happened at the golf course. And then, the other day, our dear friend Charlie's life was expunged when somebody shoots him in the neck, with a high caliber rifle while calling him a fascist. It's kind of interesting that the guy dressed in all black standing on a roof 200 yards away with a German rifle, a Mauser, shooting over a crowd of innocent people who are, who love being there and love celebrating American greatness and our Constitution and love God and love family and love American virtue. Yet Charlie somehow the fascist, coming from a guy on a roof dressed in black with a rifle. I mean, I can't make much sense of it, but that is the entire point of Under Siege and what I started writing. And I published this book literally 2 days before Charlie died. And you better believe he would have been the final chapter in this siege, because that's what it was. A siege meant to surround us, to take us out, to bankrupt us, to silence us, to make us irrelevant, to make sure we can never stand on the political stage again. And that's what these animals want to do. And Will, in this country, the bullets are only flying one way. And I'm sick and tired of hearing it the opposite. Well, there's violence on both sides. I don't know. Yeah, listen, there's fringe on both sides, 100%. But I don't know. I saw Scalise, who's a friend, get shot. And I saw my father get shot. And then I saw him almost get killed again. And then you saw what they tried to do to Kavanaugh when there's a madman with a rifle outside his home. And then you saw what they just did to Charlie Kirk. I mean, isn't that really interesting that the bullets in this country are only flying in one way? And, the party that preaches tolerance in this nation is actually the least tolerant people that you've ever met in your entire life. But that's why all of a sudden you've got this line and you've got so many people tacking over to the side. And I know you question what I said before about, I think there's a lot, I think there's a lot more good than bad, despite all the crap you see out there. Here, let me just give you a couple of metrics. We won the popular vote. We won every swing state. Every single state in our nation, all 50, swung far, far, far to the right. Counties like Miami-Dade that haven't been won in 37 years in this nation, we won by 11 points, right? We've won every single group. It didn't matter if it was African-American. It didn't matter if it was youth African-American. It didn't matter if it was a female. Every age group, Hispanic, Asian, youth votes, all across the nation, we picked up significant percentages of all those. And so here's what's happening. You had a pendulum that was way over here, and all of a sudden the pendulum's swinging way over here. And in the Democratic Party, they're losing their voice. They're losing the narrative. And frankly, right now, my father's doing such a great job that he's throwing so much steel in the air that they can't catch it. They can't even counter narrative it, right? But if they think that Charlie's death, somehow was going to erase a movement. It was not. In fact, it's only further ingrained that movement, not just here in the United States. But when you look at the 1.4 million people in the UK that walked across London Bridge, you better believe that it didn't just affect us, and it didn't just affect the youth movement on a couple college campuses. It affected the entire country, and it affected the entire world.